Good afternoon. Welcome to Campus Conversations, and thanks for joining us today, both here in person as well as those who are joining us online for our live webcast. Today's conversation is our third in a series which started back in April, and as part of the university's effort to reinvent itself, Dr. Gee is very excited about these opportunities for us to share ideas and suggestions. He mobilized 12 transformation teams that are charged to find at least $45 million in both cost savings and revenue generation over the next 5 years to invest back into our university. These teams are relying on the suggestions and the ideas from everyone here on our campus to make this effort truly successful. And that is why all of us are here today. So thank you once again. We have a few housekeeping notes before we get the party started this afternoon. So let me just remind you, the session is going to start with a presentation, and it's going to be followed with some time for questions and for suggestions, both from people who have done so online prior to today's conversation, as well as from those of you here in the audience. And the website, if you want to ask questions, if you're watching online, is bureaucracybusters.wvu.edu. Again, that's bureaucracybusters.wvu.edu. If you go there, you'll see the Campus Conversations link. Click on that page, and you'll find all the information you need in order to submit your question or suggestion. Also, you'll find on the Bureaucracy Busters website a lot of additional information, including information about upcoming campus conversations and other ways the university is already making changes on campus. There's also a place where you can make a suggestion. You can let us know about something that's working. You can also let us know if there's something that maybe needs some improvement that we weren't aware of. So we encourage you to visit bureaucracybusters.wvu.edu. If you have any other ideas about how to transform our university, be sure to submit them on the website. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our guests for today. Our speakers, Randy Hudak, Associate Vice President for Facilities and Services, as well as Stephanie Toothman, who's the Conservation Specialist with the Office of Sustainability. Just so you know, Transformation Team number 10, which these two are a big part of, is charged with implementing behavior-based utility management programs. Sounds big and complicated. They're going to explain it all for us. So that's what Randy and Stephanie are here to do. They're going to share some information about WVU's overall energy picture, steps that the university can take to reduce energy consumption. They're going to share some helpful tips about how to change maybe your own personal behavior and how all of us here on campus can get involved. So without further ado, please help me welcome Randy Hudak and Stephanie Toothman.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. And I'm going to start the conversation, and then Stephanie's going to be the closer. She's more aggressive than I am to close out this deal. So we can get to our. What'd I do? Okay, technical. Okay, so again, we're here today to talk about turning off the lights, and we're not shutting them off and putting everybody in the dark, but getting behavior changes so that we don't waste money. There's lots of opportunities for the campus to do things differently, and so we want to talk about that and also share experiences of what we've already done. Sometimes things we do, particularly from utilities, people don't really realize what we've already completed. Now what? So again, we are Transformation Team 10, and we've put our membership here. And again, the group that we put together is a fairly comprehensive cross-section of the campus around facilities. So Paula and James Kosick are from Health Science Center, and that's going to be our focus for the second meeting, as well as our pilot. We have Tracy and Stephanie, who are out of our sustainability group. And then we have Keith, Dan, Joe, Clement, that cover things like construction, maintenance, operations, and transportation and parking. So we've got a kind of a cross-section of all the units that touch the buildings, maintain the buildings, build the buildings, and so our goal is to have this group really kind of drive this process through. So just real quickly, our goals for today are three things. We want to educate you on usage and consumption. So one thing about utilities, a lot of people don't realize what we do and how we consume. The second piece will be to educate you on all what we've already done. The university has recognized utilities as a cost that I don't want to say it's a non-value added cost, but if we can reduce it, it doesn't impact the institution as well as other things do. So we want to make sure you understand what we've already done to curtail it. And then finally, and the biggest thing is to really challenge the group and empower the entire campus to join in. And that's what Stephanie's going to talk about, is how do all of you join in and become part of this process of reducing cost. So first we'll start out with the budget slide. Now this was first presented in the first presentation by Narvel and Russ, and it kind of broke out our budget for the institution. What we're going to focus on today is the dark blue. It's a little slice, but it's still 32 million. So again, a substantial amount of, actually it's 38 million. No, 32 million, I had it right the first time. Again, that is what we pay in utilities on an annual basis. So we're going to start with that, and we'll expand from there. And one of the things people ask at times is, why are we worried about utilities, and why are we focusing on utilities? And what I tell them is that a couple things happen with utilities. They're kind of invisible to people. I turn my light on, I have light. I don't think that it's costing money. Typically utilities are paid centrally, so I don't see what my consumption does from a budget standpoint. And then the other thing is, this is a very easy topic for others to participate in. Some of the transformation teams are very specialized. Every one of us can benefit from this. Every one of us can save money, and we all like to save money, so I think, why not focus on utilities? So I'm going to give us a little background on our utilities. There are some nuances about our utilities that are important to know. Again, three of our primary utilities is, of course, electric, that we get from Mon Power, just like everybody else. We do buy it at 23,000 volt, which gives us a much better deal as far as the cost of power. So when we look at cost, we're going to focus on consumption, not necessarily cost. The second one is steam. And our steam we purchase from Morgantown Energy Associates. It's a third-party provider. It's downtown. Our steam is used for heating. It's used for hot water heating. It's used for actually cooling with steam absorption units. We have a cap on our steam. We have a minimum buy. And unfortunately, that prohibits us from doing too much conservation. We could do conservation, but we don't save any money. Let's put it that way. So we have done conservation, but it's not as high a priority as some of the other utilities that we have control over. And then natural gas. We buy that from Dominion like everybody else. And natural gas isn't a huge commodity. We don't use a lot of it, but we do have some gas boilers and gas water heaters. So today's focus is really going to be about the electric. And on the right side of the slide, we don't sit here and just say we're doing a good job, we're doing a bad job. We've actually done some peer reviews, and where we are is kind of in the middle of the pack there. And I think that's a good job. We're doing a good job, but there's a lot more we can do. We want to be the best of that group. And just to give you some understanding of some of the schools that we're comparing ourselves to, it's not our academic peers necessarily, it's geographic, it's density, it's the type of school they are, to try to compare from a utility standpoint versus an academic standpoint. So there's some pretty big hitters in here, like Brown, Carnegie Mellon, Indiana University, Johns Hopkins, Penn State. So those are some of the peers that we're comparing ourselves to, and we will continue to do this throughout the process and through the years to see, are we getting better as our peers, with our peers. So let's talk about electricity. The left side of the graph gives us a little, or the left side of the chart gives us a little graph of our consumption. The little dots are our regional campuses, and they get bigger. The gold dot is Health Science Center, and the blue is the rest of the main campus. So clearly the main campus consumes the lion's share of the power. Health science is a close second, so that's why those are the areas we're really focused on. We're going to take this same program to the regionals, but again, because of their consumption, it's not going to be as high a priority as the main campus in health sciences. We consume, and this is a big number, 194 million kilowatt hours per year. So, a huge number. And equate it to something maybe others can understand better. It's equivalent of powering 17,636 homes per year. And I did a little fun fact of my own. It'd be like burning 220,319 100-watt bulbs for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, which doesn't sound, at first doesn't sound like a lot, but if every one of those homes, every one of our houses, it would be 12 to 15 bulbs we just left on and burnt forever. And if you add that power up, it's a considerable amount of power. So again, we spend 11 million per year, and this is after improvements we've already made. So this is what we just spent this past year. We've already dropped our bill considerably with some of the efforts, but now we've got this last piece that's going to take everybody's cooperation and interest to really knock it down even more. So what have we done? A lot of times we throw things out and ask people to do things, but again, we want to lead by example. So the institution recognized the cost of utilities is something that we want to reduce. It's been out there for a long time. You know, since I was a young kid, we talked about turn the lights off, you know, different things. Energy is expensive. It's going to go up. It's not going to go down. And so we want to make sure that we've done our due diligence. So one of the things we've done is performance contracting. And we've been doing this for about 10 years now. And what performance contracting is a way to replace obsolete equipment, upgrade equipment like lighting, HVAC, plumbing fixtures, boilers, things like that. And basically then you pay for the cost of those goods through the savings in energy. So it's kind of a net zero for the institution. We conserve and have the value of both the cost reduction and the environmental savings, but we also, it's not a cost to the institution. It's kind of a net zero from a finance perspective. So we've saved $16 million over the life of that project so far, and we're still continuing to work on that. We're working on a performance contracting right now for the new Beckley campus. So we're looking for ways to save money any which way we go. And I think the bigger thing, 16 million is a huge number, but if you look at the environmental impact and some of the stats there, 850 acres of forest that was preserved, 300 million pounds of greenhouse gas was avoided, and 22,000 autos off the road. So if you think of it from that perspective, some people can associate more of that. It's a significant impact to the environment and also a very large savings for the institution. The other thing we've done, most people have heard of LEED. If you haven't, LEED is the Leadership for Energy and Environmental Design. It was the USGA Green Council. People put it out to say, okay, we're not building our buildings very smart. We're not building them very energy effective. And so they put together a lot of standards and checkpoints and entitle people to try to get to a particular level, and they call it certified. Then there's the gold or silver, gold, platinum. And it was to incent people to do the right thing and put in the infrastructure that was energy efficient. And we liked the concept. The challenge for us was that we have one LEED certified building, which is Ogilvie Hall, if you're not familiar with that. And we got the plaque and it's in the building. But the cost to get that plaque is between $100,000 and $150,000 to do all the testing and validation and verification. So we liked the concept. We didn't like paying to get a plaque. So we've actually took all those standards, or a good portion of the standards, and implemented in our design standards for new construction. So when we do a new building on campus, we're already implementing things like efficient HVAC. We're looking at LED lighting. We're doing day lighting, green roofs. We manage stormwater. We manage our landscape plan to be as conscious of the consumption of water, electric, steam as we can be. And so the last round, we've just done a lot of construction, and across the board, every building would be LEED certified. Some of them might actually be in the silver and gold category. Without doing the full analysis, I wouldn't go out public and say that. But I think, again, the point we're trying to make is we have invested up front in our buildings to reduce costs down. And that's important. So people see the new construction. We talk about LEED, but again, every building we just built, we saved about $100,000, $150,000 per. So 10 buildings, $1 million that we didn't spend, but we still are reaping the benefit from the energy side. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Stephanie, and Stephanie's going to take us home.
Okay, here comes the finisher. Thank you, Randy. So, as you can see, we have done some fantastic upgrades to our buildings to become more energy efficient, but the one area that we really haven't pursued yet is that behavior-based component. All of the automated systems, all of the wonderful building features are great, but what about the individual piece? What can I do while I'm here at the university to help conserve? And so our transformation team was able to create a way to do this within 4 areas by focusing on lights, electronics, temperature, and shared network printers. And we focus on these areas because we feel that these areas are the highest degree of control that an individual can have in their office area. So let's just dive right in. Now, I want to start off by saying that a lot of the conservation tips that I'm going to be suggesting are quite basic, quite simple, and often the question comes up, could that really make a difference if I do that? And the answer is absolutely yes, and especially as a university, collective participation from everyone will absolutely create a substantial amount of energy conservation. So when it comes to lights, very simple, very basic, we just want to encourage and remind folks to turn off the lights when they leave the room, to think about their overhead lighting, their task lighting, office lamps, even in conference rooms, kind of that mentality of whoever is the last to leave, go ahead and turn them off. When it comes to electronics, WVU ITS is currently rolling out a power management setting standard that will be applied to all computers across campus that they service, with the exception with a few small operating system groups. So instead of turning off our computers at the end of the day, ITS is recommending that we allow our computers to automatically go into this sleep mode. Once it's in this sleep mode, ITS can run important upgrades, antivirus scans, all throughout the evening while we're at home. And now I do want to mention that if you do turn off your computer at the end of the day, you will in fact receive those upgrades and those antivirus scans. However, they won't occur until you turn your operating system back on, which will ultimately delay you from getting to work and starting right on time. You're going to be waiting, and it'll be stalled until all of those upgrades and installations are complete. And my friend Brent Kramer over at ITS put it best when he said, it's kind of like getting your car tires rotated and oil changed while it's parked in your driveway in the evening. It's getting its maintenance taken care of. It's not bothering you in the slightest, rather than if you were to have that maintenance taken care of first thing in the morning while you're trying to get to work on time. Now, I will say with the latest technology and how energy efficient our computers are already, when we're talking about the amount of kilowatt hours that a computer uses while in a sleep mode, it's negligible compared to if the operating system was completely turned off. So taking this into consideration, as well as the importance of having those frequent scans and upgrades, ITS will be rolling out this power management setting this summer. In addition to electronics, we're encouraging folks to unplug battery chargers when not in use. Believe it or not, even if it is no longer charging something but still in the outlet, it is still drawing power. And to us, that seems very wasteful. No one is benefiting from that. So that's just a nice tip to remind yourself when you're done charging something, go ahead and unplug it completely. And also to use centralized appliances. We want you to consider using your break rooms, refrigerators and microwaves and coffee pots rather than having those kinds of appliances in your office space. To avoid these duplicated efforts, we'll be able to conserve energy as well. Now, when it comes to temperature, WVU operates our buildings in a temperature range between 68 and 74 degrees Fahrenheit. This is, we've taken this from a national range, what a lot of businesses and higher education institutes follow. And truthfully, we want to know if your office doesn't fall under that range, if it's up below or above that temperature range, we want to know about it. Because certainly there might be something underlying that's a bigger issue at hand. And so we're encouraging employees to report these kinds of extreme temperature changes. And you can do this in a few ways. We encourage you to contact your building supervisor, or if you have a certain specific contact within your building that works closely with facilities. And also, we have a place on the Bureaucracy Busters where you can go in and submit feedback, suggestions, and concerns such as these. And then last but not least, shared network printers. We're suggesting that employees start to migrate toward using a central network versus a personal printer. By doing this, we can certainly save a lot of electricity as well as cost. We actually did a study a few years ago to try to look at the benefits of shared network printers, and we found that when calculating the operating, the maintenance, even the ink cartridges that you purchase for a personal printer, we're looking at anywhere between 7 to 21 cents per black and white copy if used on a personal printer. Versus if you were to do that same exact job on a shared network, we're looking at 2 to 4 cents a copy. Even more so, going back to personal printers, it ranges between 19 to 56 cents a copy for a color copy sheet, versus if you were to use that same shared network, it would be around 8 cents. So again, very significant cost savings, and in the next few slides, I'll actually show you the cost comparison. And then it's also important to mention double-sided printing. By simply making a computer setting to operate in a double-sided printing versus single-sided, that can substantially cut a department's purchasing literally in half. So that's another great opportunity for savings. So let's talk a little bit about how we're going to roll this out. First and foremost, we know that education and outreach are key. We want to come to you at this campus conversation to start the dialogue. We want your feedback on energy conservation and how we can improve. So first things first, we're going to provide education and outreach to our buildings. We want to hold building meetings with building representatives. We want to have kickoff meetings and kickoff events in all of our buildings. We're going to be training our campus service workers because they ultimately play a huge role in this as well. For example, when they're cleaning an area in a building, we're also going to want them to follow these same tips, as simple as turning off the lights before they leave to move on to the next section that they'll be cleaning. And we're also going to be canvassing our buildings with printed material such as these fun door hangers that have a list of all these helpful tips along the way. This is something that you can simply put by your computer somewhere on your desk. It's a nice constant reminder. Now, later on, we want to come back to your buildings and have evening building audits. We want to see where our successes are and our challenges may lie. We're also going to be distributing friendly reminders to help people keep engaged. So some fun things, and it's also on the screen as well, some of these cards. The idea is to keep people engaged and to continue the participation, because This program is unique in that it's not going to end in 6 months, a year, 5 years. We're hoping to create long-lasting behavior changes so that eventually this is just the way the university operates. So we know that constant promotion and marketing is also key in this process. And then last but not least, we want to measure our outcomes. We're going to be working really closely with our facilities management engineers as they collect data to show exactly how much electricity is being used from each building. And then we're going to be able to chart our progress along the way. We'll be doing that communication publicly, especially using the Bureaucracy Busters website as well. And when it comes to timeline and rollout, Randy had mentioned we're actually going to start this process over at Health Science Center first. And it's going to begin as early as next week. And then when fall comes around, we're going to take clusters of buildings at a time, and so that eventually, overall, we'll be able to provide this program to all of the downtown and Evansdale buildings throughout the rest of the year. Now, of course, since I have said that we're doing this in certain phases, please don't let me stop you. Now that you have all these great conservation tips, start now, even though we may not be hitting your building for a while, because the sooner the better, and truthfully, the savings are certainly there. And speaking of savings, let's just go right into the potential savings that we have been calculating. While the tips seem relatively simple, your contributions are huge, and together we can make a tremendous impact on our energy consumption. And in general, other universities across the nation that have similar programs such as this have seen, they've experienced a 10% in savings, if not higher. And so that's what we've based our approach on. We would like your help. Help us reduce electricity by 10%. And if we do that, we can save roughly around $1.1 million annually. In addition, like I had mentioned before with the shared network versus personal printers, you'll see on the screen that we have a cost comparison. By simply making this switch and migrating toward a central network, there's potential savings of almost $3 million each year by doing so. And then again, going back to that double-sided printing philosophy, by changing those simple settings onto your printer to include double-sided, our departments can literally cut their paper purchasing in half right off of the bat. So in conclusion, challenges certainly create opportunities. And that's truly how we feel about this. You know, we're one of the 12 transformation teams that have been given the unique opportunity to find ways to conserve money and of course conserve energy. Our task is to find over $45 million in the next 5 years to cost avoidance or revenue. And that's a lofty goal, but we feel in our transformation team that the plan that we have put out before you and the conservation tips that we think are pretty easy and manageable that everyone can be a part of, we feel very confident that we can make a significant difference here. But again, this program will only be a success if we're all in it together as one WVU. So with that, I will go ahead and let's open this up for discussion.
I'm going to invite Stephanie and Randy to come down to the floor. Thank you both very much for all the information. And open the floor for any questions or suggestions. Don't be shy. This is why we're all here today. Anyone have a question? Venetia. I'm coming with a microphone.
Hi. Just had a question about the ITS rollout with the computer going to sleep. Will that affect the monitors as well? Because I'm in the practice of turning off my monitor before I leave the office, so that's taking away energy. So I didn't know if you knew the answer to that.
Great question. So from my conversations with ITS, yes, everything will be automatically going into that sleep mode. They did say, however, if someone feels compelled to go ahead and turn that button off from their monitor, go ahead.
Anyone else with a question?
Are we excited?
Well, we did have someone submit a question online before today's conversation. This is from Patty, and her question relates back to temperature and buildings, which you talked a little bit about, Stephanie. The question or thought on the topic was to strongly recommend that the air conditioning in various buildings be set at perhaps a more reasonable temperature. One example mentioned by Patty was the mountain lair, which she thought was cold, particularly during the summer months, and a lot of employees are wearing sweaters and jackets to stay warm in their offices. So if you could address that from a more specific standpoint, maybe.
Go ahead. Well, let me talk to Dan here. No, stay there, Dan. The mountain lair has been a challenge. We know the temperature is a little bit low. We just did some work a couple weeks ago due to some concerns and complaints to raise the temperature. And we also we replaced a few new air handlers to newer models so we have better control. So we know it's a problem and we're working on it. Some things we can solve, some may require more upgrades to the system. Some of it's behavior based. One of the behaviors out there that's not really the fact is that if I cool space before a big crowd gets there, it's going to be a more pleasant experience for them, and it's actually the opposite. So we have some training on our end to make sure that if it's not maintaining temperature, so if it's set at 70 degrees or 72 and it's not maintaining, call us because there's something wrong. Don't turn it down because it will cool down to 55 if you lower it to 55, and then you just have uncomfortable customers.
I have a question. What about areas that have a lot of electronics equipment in that particular space? Are there special considerations given to those areas where there may be some heat generated by the equipment itself? How is that handled?
Well, we have, again, the first thing we're going to tell everybody as we go out is if you have an issue, let us know. It's a very big campus. It changes, it has a pretty dramatic change over time. People start to utilize rooms for different functions. Sometimes they tell us, sometimes they don't. And so a heat load from equipment is a very common where we'll get a complaint. Health Science has a good bit of this where they've moved equipment into the room without really telling people, plugged it all in, and all of a sudden it's 80 degrees because the air was there for a storage area. So once we know what someone wants to do, we can adapt there. Again, sometimes it's not possible to do everything the customer wants, but the idea is if we're aware of them, we can address them. Equipment is one that requires, depending on the equipment, a lot of extra cooling, so we have to make sure if we can get a heads up ahead of time, we can adapt the air to satisfy that.
Other questions? We have a quiet crowd today. Yes.
I'll ask another building question. Some of the older buildings on campus that are steam heated radiators run the radiators full blast all winter. I know in our building the air conditioners are often on in the winter because the radiators can't be shut off, and the windows are often open in the middle of the winter because the radiators can't be shut off reliably. Is there anything that can be done about shutting off the radiators when it's blasting people to the point that they need their air conditioning and open windows in January?
Well, we can't just shut the heaters off because we'll have freezing issues. But if you would send room numbers, which building are you?
Which building are you in? Student Services Building.
Okay.
Student Services Building. There are individual controls on the radiator, but many of them don't work and they break frequently and have to be replaced over and over again.
That's on the Siemens performance contract to be done downtown this summer.
Okay, what Dan just said is that's one of our next phase performance contracting projects, is to look at that building. It'd be the controls so they can get better function.
Okay.
So So it seems like it's going to be difficult to get buy-in for people to turn off their lights in their offices when so many lights are on in hallways and outside lights, et cetera. I was here really early, like 4 in the morning, over the winter, and Evansdale campus is really, really, really well lit. Has there been any thought about reducing some of that?
That's a fantastic question. And, you know, one thing I'd like to mention is we know that continual training is going to be key, especially folks that have the most control over some of the lighting throughout the evening will happen to be through the campus service worker program. And so knowing that that there may be turnover, we're going to be constantly training them and making sure that we can do our part. But we're also, in those evening building audits that I mentioned, we're going to be taking a look at the hallways and exactly how much light needs to be lit for emergency evacuation, of course. But we're going to take that in consideration. So fantastic comment.
And I could add to that, again, when people walk in the space, there is always a certain amount of light for egress. So sometimes they think someone forgot to turn the lights off. But again, the Evansdale, we see it all over campus, it's not just Evansdale. Part of that issue is the custodial training. Some of his researchers coming in and maybe some bigger spaces where they turn all the lights on, but they're only working in one small, one waterfront and has a lot of open space. That's a challenge. So one person comes in to work on Saturday, turns the lights on an entire floor on, and then doesn't turn them off when they leave. So there's a lot of training. The other thing that, just so people understand, sometimes it's how we schedule work. So our custodians in some building work Sunday to Thursday night. So if someone comes in on Friday or Friday night and turns the lights on it, they're going to burn all weekend. There's no one there to turn them off. So we're going to have to change some behaviors.
Yeah, but much of the lights that I'm talking about are not, there's no switch for them. They're automatically on. There's no control, and they're never out. I understand the safety issues, but there's an awful lot of lights that are on that aren't really needed.
Okay, as we do our walkarounds, and we're going to do the walkarounds after the staff is gone, so maybe midnight or so. Yeah, so when we do the walkarounds, we'll find those and address them. If you have specific areas, again, send us to contact.
Please do.
The exterior lighting we're changing out to LEDs. We're about halfway done on campus with LEDs.
Yeah, Dan Zion, we've been changing the campus lighting, particularly downtown, the pole lights to LED. So we see that improvement. They're much brighter, and again, burn it probably a quarter or less to the cost.
Anyone else? I knew you'd eventually come around.
So as we talk about future changes, the financial support for different buildings to upgrade lights, Stephanie, we've had conversation about LEDs in our basketball courts at the rec center, and so what is some funding for that type of project, and where would that come from?
Well, there's different ways to fund it. We have deferred dollars, which if the fixtures are obsolete or beyond repair, when we change them out, we'd use deferred dollars to change fixtures. We can always request central services. We can do performance contracting and lighting. So we have different mechanisms. The biggest challenge with LED, and we're just getting into it now because of cost. The payback on LEDs was extremely long. Some lights had a payback of 21 years, 30 years. So from a financial perspective, it didn't make sense. So we're always weighing that as well. But the LEDs are coming down in cost. They're going up in quality. So we'll see more and more LEDs going into play.
Well, we've had great questions, and thanks to everyone who's asked a question. And for those online, a reminder that you can go to the bureaucracybusters.wvu.edu website to submit additional questions or ideas. And I want to thank again Stephanie and Randy for coming today, and thank all of you. And be sure to continue looking in Mountaineer eNews for updates in the Bureaucracy Busters section, as well as other portions of eNews for updates on upcoming campus conversation events, because we will be continuing the series. In addition, this webcast will be posted online at the Bureaucracy Busters website, so be sure to go there to review it or share it with other people people who maybe couldn't attend or watch live today. And everyone have a safe afternoon, and we'll see you for the next Campus Conversations. Thanks, everyone.